And I wrote this screenplay for Il Bushri Talk at the same time that I wrote the script for Moonlight. I took a trip to Europe in the summer of 2013, and I wrote both screenplays. I didn't even have the rights to the novel
Wait,
when I
in one
adapted
summer you wrote both of these?
6 weeks. I was in Brussels and Berlin, and but I had no life, bruh. I had no life.
My first introduction to Barry Jenkins was his Oscar win for Moonlight.
Moonlight, Best Picture.
Needless to say, I cried. On the surface, we think that we've seen this film before. It's the poor black boy from the ghetto turned gangster narrative. Yet, Barry Jenkins tells the story differently, not to negate the importance of some similar films, but his scores feel more like classical music, and his characters are well developed with backstories. For me, watching a Barry Jenkins film is like having a question posed to you. He does this in both of his companion pieces, If Beale Street Could Talk and Moonlight. In this video, we'll explore how Barry Jenkins tells these stories with compelling character relationships. If Moonlight is the absence of love in the context of the Black experience in America, then If Beale Street Could Talk is the abundance of love disrupted by that same experience. Barry shows this through the dynamic character relationships in both films, as well as the physical changes both Fonny and Chiron undergo. To Jenkins, story is the best way to translate ideas, and relationships between characters is the best way to translate an emotion. The relationship between Chiron and Juan is one of guidance, where Juan acts as Chiron's mentor. Juan fills in as a father figure for Chiron and loves him accordingly. In contrast, Chiron's mother, who is addicted to crack, is unable to show him love in his youth. This specific relationship highlights the absence of love. It's not until Chiron is older and has chosen a path his mom doesn't agree with that she outwardly tells him that she loves him in the film.
I love you, Chiron. I do. I love you, baby.
Teresa and Chiron's relationship is another direct contrast of the love he experiences from his mother. The last example of love is between Chiron and Kevin. This love acts as the center plotline of the film. It's the love that Chiron desires but doesn't fully attain. He's unable to express himself to Kevin with words, even until the end of the film. He tries to keep up a wall, set in place and reinforced by the absence of love he's felt all his life. Kevin dents this wall, but does he ever fully break through? That's the question Jenkins leaves in the air. Chiron's environment shaped his relationships and impacts the way he expresses the emotion of love with those around him. Tish and Fonny's relationship is in sharp contrast to Chiron and Kevin's, partly to do with the homophobia in Chiron's community, which doesn't allow them to outwardly show their love for each other, but also because of the environment Tish and Fonny are raised in. In Beale Street, Tish is the protagonist, and her relationship with Fonny is filled with love, joy, and happiness. They don't hide their emotions from each other, but Tish and Fonny's love is set in 1970s America, and so the systematic injustice and racism drives a physical wall between them.
I hope that nobody has ever had to look at anybody they love through glass. I need to tell.
The film takes the emotion of what it feels like to be oppressed by American society and puts it into the housing of the relationship between Tish and Fonny. The film is told from the perspective of Tish's consciousness and frame of mind. Throughout the film, we see her trying to reconnect with Fonny and get him out of jail. Spoiler alert, she's unsuccessful, and Fonny has to take a plea deal and admit to the crime he didn't do.
Maybe I feel different if I had done something and got caught, but I ain't do nothing. They was just playing with me because they knew they could. And look, I'm lucky that I only got 2 years because when you in there, they can do with you whatever they want. You hear me? Whatever they want. And they dogs, man.
We can also compare Tish's relationship with her mom, Sharon Rivers. which is on the other side of the spectrum when compared to Chiron and his mom. Sharon is supportive. She helps Tish tell the rest of her family that she's pregnant, and she even travels to Puerto Rico to help set Fonny free. Tish's relationship with her mom helps her love for Fonny, but Chiron's relationship with his mom does not help his love for Kevin. Nonetheless, both movies are about black families and black mothers trying their hardest to raise their children. Both Chiron and Fonny undergo a physical change in response to the direct oppression they face in their society, yet their connection with their past selves and those around them are maintained through their eyes. For Chiron, he builds muscle to appear less weak to the world and becomes physically unrecognizable to his past self.
Who is you, man?
Who, me?
Yeah, nigga, you. I'm saying, man, them fronts. That car. Who is you, Chiron?
I'm me, man. I ain't trying to be nothing else.
He's performing a version of masculinity often expected of black men. He tries to bury the version of Little we learn of in the first two halves of the film, but the thing that remains constant is the feeling behind his eyes, and Jenkins uses this. In Walter Murch's In the Blink of an Eye, he expresses the idea that the pathway into cinema and the gateway of empathy is through the eyes. This is a concept that Jenkins held onto and utilized in his films, by placing the camera between actors, so it becomes an active participant in the story. He specifically casted the actors that played Chiron with the emotion behind their eyes in mind. So, through his eyes, we recognize the Chiron of the past and the Chiron of the present, and we see the love he has for Kevin in those same eyes. Jenkins applies the same concept to Beale Street. Fonny undergoes a physical change in Tish's eyes, due to the brutality he faces in prison. The physical change is not self-imposed like Chiron's, but imposed upon Fonny. Yet, Tish and Fonny still express the same love they have for each other behind their eyes. The relationships that Tish and Chiron have had in these films are what translate the ideas Jenkins wants to express in his films. He places the emotion of love in the context of various dynamic relationships, then shows the audience how the situation of each character affects this love. He poses questions about police brutality, neglect, and systematic injustice, then leaves the audience to think about it.